Hello everyone, Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. Today is Wednesday, October the 23rd. We are starting one more live stream, and today we're gonna be discussing about an interesting subject. As you probably know, we do publish some videos on our, not only YouTube channel, but also on Facebook and Instagram. And it was interesting to me to note that, many people, whenever we are talking about buying properties in Brazil, some people, they are going to get worked up. They are going to get very combatant and saying that nobody should buy property in Brazil. I would guess, some of these people are going to be, usually Brazilians who have moved from Brazil to the United States in search, seeking a better life. But as we know from our practice, there are many U.S. citizens who also moved to Brazil seeking exactly the same thing, to get a better life. So my question to you over here is, what do you think are the advantages of living in the U.S. and Brazil? One thing for sure, there is never an absolute answer in a sense that one place is definitely better than the other. It's always a matter of preference, but I would like to hear from you. What do you think the advantages for each of those countries are, the United States and Brazil? There you go. I see Bill. Welcome, Bill. Bill is the first one to send us a message. Oi, Luciano, we are ready to go. That's great, Bill. Bill, I hope you got the referral for, our dentist friend. And let us know if you got the information. And for anyone else looking to have a dental work in Brazil, as I discussed, like this is pretty common for people to come from abroad, not only for dental work, but also for cosmetic surgeries and other things health related. Okay, we have the first participation regarding my question. Caplo in Kingston. Welcome, Caplo. United States, higher salary. That's a great point, Caplo. I couldn't agree more. Okay, Bill is confirming he did got the referral. And to expand on Caplo's note, indeed, Caplo, and something interesting we see happening here at the firm is many people from the United States, whenever they can work remotely, they are trying to pick a country with a lower cost of living to maximize their salaries, right? So if you think about it, like it's like you're getting the best of both worlds. You are being paid in the United States with really high salaries when compared to other countries. And if they pick Brazil or if they pick Portugal, for instance, they are gonna spending less to have a comparable, a lifestyle and usually not only comparable, but even better lifestyle, right? So this is the concept, like there is an ongoing concept people is gonna call geo arbitrage. Geo arbitrage, meaning you get money in a country and you spend in another. Okay, so you get money from the US and you spend money elsewhere, right? So that's the geo arbitrage, and I think it's a trend, but it's not like a temporary trend. I think this is something that we're gonna be seeing more and more. Because nowadays, particularly after COVID, right? Like, I mean, most people are able to work remotely, and therefore you don't need to live in the same place where you work, if that makes sense. All right, Keplo has another take. Brazil, better culture. Yes, Caplo, that's an interesting take. Like Brazil, it has a very rich culture, particularly, like when you think about the size of Brazil, there are many traditions that are particular to a certain state. So we have, like different music rhythms, we have different costumes, we have different holidays, we have different beliefs, we have different religions, and so much more. Really nice take, Keplo. All right. William Frost, welcome, William. Good to see you here again. William is sharing, I can't say for sure about the United States as I don't know it. I would guess that food is better in Brazil. There is more fresh food. I know people who grow mangoes in their garden in Brazil. That's for sure, William. And I did share about that in the past. And we actually had, I think it was an article at Newsweek. Not sure if it was Newsweek magazine in the United States, and there was a reporter. She was interviewing about quality of health in different countries, and I did participate with a couple of quotes, sharing that both in Brazil and Portugal, food is much fresher because the timeline between like harvesting or catching a fish to your table, it's much shorter than it is in the United States. And maybe that's a consequence of the higher salaries that Kepler was mentioning. People are always so busy, doing, this type of work in which you don't use your hands, or, there are other types of work that pay better. So even though the United States is actually pretty big in terms of, produce, and there are so many farms out there, for milk, for orange juice, and wheat and other products. But the reality is, like, if you go to a supermarket and if you look at the shelves, you're going to realize that a large percentage of the products, they're coming from abroad, right? And for a product to come from abroad, you're going to have, like all the travel time. Usually it's going to come, by ship, and then you're going to have the containers, and then they need you to unload, they need to move this cargo. So I like this take on the food, and for me, that's one of the biggest downsides I believe, that someone can face in the U.S. Not only that, but we also know that regulation in the United States, unfortunately, it's skewed because of all the lobby done at the Congress level. And I don't know how this could be, but there is a lot of, harmful chemicals like in food that is absolutely acceptable in the United States, but not elsewhere, right? Like particularly Europeans who have a really advanced framework when it comes to, preclude companies, greedy companies to, add like harmful ingredients to your food. So Europeans, it's just startling to Europeans how the United States can tolerate such levels of harmful food in the U.S. Diet. So that's a pretty good take. Now, in Brazil, interesting to note, you're going to have like different levels of access to freshness when it comes to food. Like if you are in São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, you have a kind of microcosm of what happens in the United States, right? But in Brazil, we're not going to be importing food from other countries. Instead, we're going to be usually importing food from other states. So if you are in São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, of course, the traveling time is going to be shorter, so the food is still going to be much better than it would be in the United States. But if you compare to states in the northeast of the country or the north, those states in the north and the northeast, they are going to usually have a better access to really fresh food because, the purchase power of those states it's lower when compared to São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, and therefore it's going to make more sense for people from those states to buy locally, to grow locally. So like whenever I choose to be in Ceará instead of São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro as much as I can, that's going to be one of the reasons for that. It's going to be because everything that I eat is pretty fresh. Like, I mean, milk, it's usually from the same day. It was produced on the same day, and it's difficult to believe it. But in Ceará, like when you live in the Fortaleza area, for instance, like I stay in Beberibe, 1 hour south of Fortaleza, and they are gonna sell milk that's not even pasteurized, right? Pasteurized means whenever you get the milk from the cow, they go through like a process of increasing the temperature really high and then reducing substantially, to kind of kill bacteria. But there is a whole current of thinking saying that this actually, destroys the protein in milk, and it makes milk pretty much useless from a health perspective, right? So, believe it or not, in Ceará, we have access to milk that was not pasteurized, and the taste is amazing. Like you can tell, like, a milk, like a natural milk coming from the farm, like, in the same morning that was got from the cow. I don't know which verb we should use, like when you milk the cow. But it's a completely different experience, right? Like the same thing for other ingredients. Almost everything is going to come locally, and you can tell the freshness. And I even tell my wife, like once I've been in Ceará, for a few weeks, I can tell I feel much better than I feel when I am elsewhere. Okay, so there is something really, really important to how fresh your food are. And unfortunately, if you are in the US, you are almost doomed to have this kind of food coming from, elsewhere. I know there are some, supermarkets, particularly in Texas, there is AGB. Like I'm familiar with AGB, and I can tell there is a huge difference between AGB and other supermarkets. They have like fresh produce, they have a fresh meat, and so even in the US there is a somewhat trend to try to give you access to better foods, but I don't think this trend is going to materialize because of Whole Foods or Sprout, those kind of chains that are very expensive and not accessible to most of the population. Okay, we have Ellie. Welcome. It has been a while since we last spoke, Ellie, and I think we had a consultation not a long time ago. Good to see you here, Ellie. Brazil has lower living costs, beautiful places if you plan properly, healthier life, no stress, enjoying life. Yes, Ellie, that's absolutely true. In the United States, people are always busy working, which I don't think it's a bad thing per se, but it's pretty common to see like people who are going to be working longer hours, particularly in the legal profession, like which I'm familiar with. I have several lawyers who are friends, like in the United States, throughout the United States, and some of them they are going to work consistently between 10 to 12 hours a day. Right, consistently 10 12 hours a day, and I'm not talking about a few months or a few years, but pretty much for their entire professional life, right? And then when they become 65 or 70, then they are going to retire and consider something like Brazil. Is still better than nothing, I would say, but I would say even better is getting access like to Brazil in earlier age. Okay, particularly we have a client who is a corporate attorney in Massachusetts, and he works from Rio de Janeiro. So since COVID, he has been able to work remotely, And he bought a property in Rio de Janeiro with our help. We got him the real estate investor visa, and eventually he told me that their employers, like his employers, like they don't even know about the fact that he lives in Rio, right? And it's interesting because sometimes they schedule meetings at the office. Law firms, they usually have a couple of meetings monthly in order to for all of the attorneys to meet in a conference room and discuss cases and get ideas. And he would travel like every single occasion. He would travel from Brazil to the United States like twice a month just to be in those meetings. So his employer, they don't know that he's pretty much living in Brazil, right? So pretty interesting. And he is in his studies. Okay, so very lucky guy. Right timing, right profession, but sharing as some feedback for you. I know that many of you are planning your move to Brazil, so I think those things, discussing the pros and cons, are helpful for that purpose. William Frost, also the barbecue culture is amazing in Brazil as the meat preparation is incredible. Also, meat is quite affordable compared to the UK. That's not to say that the US doesn't have a good barbecue. Yes, William. Barbecue is something big in Brazil, and I'm sure most of you have heard about the fogo de chão. Fogo de chão is like, the a rodizio, right? Rodizio is like that style of restaurant in which you go, you pay like a fixed fee, and you can eat as much meat as you want, right? But that's more like on the corporate, on the chain restaurant side. But in our personal lives as Brazilians, barbecue is a major component. Usually, people are gonna have different techniques, to have a barbecue. Yes, that's a great point. I love a barbecue. I'm very used to barbecue. It does not matter where I am. And interesting enough, like in my house, my wife, she's the barbecue person. Usually in the Brazilian culture, it's gonna be, like a man's job to handle the barbecue, but I'm not really, a handy person, like when it comes, like to, work with materials or work with things. And she's pretty good at it. And so, eventually we decided, listen, instead of eating a crappy barbecue from Luciano, like we gotta have, the real thing. So now she's the barbecue chef in my home, right? But pretty consistent trait of the Brazilian culture, barbecue. Again, and it's across the board, right? Like, I mean, of course, it's pretty strong in Santa Catarina. Rio Grande do Sul has a barbecue culture, amazing barbecue culture. Most of the churrascarias, most of the meat restaurants, they come from the south, usually from Rio Grande do Sul. So if there is like a leadership board, Rio Grande do Sul is going to be first, Santa Catarina is going to be second, and the other states are going to come next, because the south of the country, they have an amazing culture for barbecue. But listen, if you are in the northeast, if you are in the north, if you are like in the center west, it does not matter where you are. In Brazil, barbecue is going to be big. William Frost, an additional take. I'm assuming that there is less corruption in the US as in Brazil. This is a massive problem at most levels. Again, not to say this doesn't happen in USA, but I think it's more common in Brazil. Absolutely, William. Like, I mean, no need for you to like sugarcoat. Okay, no need for you to sugarcoat that. William, I'm not sure if you know about it, but out of the 10 less governors in Rio de Janeiro, 5, I'm not sure if 5 or 6, they went to jail, okay, for corruption. So listen, I love Rio de Janeiro. That's where we have most of our real estate business. That's where we make most of our money in Brazil, is Rio de Janeiro. But listen, it's sometimes it's sad to see the state of things when it comes like to, like corruption. Okay, so I'm not concerned about being sued by anyone because this is public knowledge. Again, like, out of the 10 last governors in Rio de Janeiro, more than half went to jail for corruption charge. So what to say, right? Like, I don't think you need to say much more than that. And it's also interesting that that's at least my personal perspective on that. Corruption is not limited like to the government, right? Like sometimes you see that happening, particularly in the political discourse in the United States, right? Like, oh, poor country, like poor Haiti, right? Like, they're plagued by militia, they're plagued by the government, right? And that's the same thing in the Middle East. Oh, poor countries, like, they are being like managed by these unscrupulous like politicians and leaders. But in my opinion, like political leaders, they don't come from a tree, right? I think Kamala Harris said something similar. She tried to say something similar, saying, like, I'm not sure, you don't come from the stars, like you are in a certain environment. Like I remember, like people made a lot of fun because the way she explained it, it wasn't very clear. But the point is, like, everything is connected. So if there is this much corruption in Brazil, unfortunately, there is a trait in our society that is prone to this kind of government. Okay, that's my opinion. So whenever I'm dealing with foreign citizens, whenever I'm dealing with my peers in Brazil, and I'm not saying that I'm perfect. Like, I have these traits inside of me, and I've been fighting those traits for my entire life, right? So far from me to try to say that I'm perfect, but I'm always trying to fight, this concept of flexibilizing the law, of accepting things that should not be accepted. Pretty common in Brazil, okay? I'm gonna give you an example, right? Like a pretty clear example. When you buy property in Brazil, you should disclose your civil status, meaning are you single or are you married or are you divorced? And when you are divorced, the registries in Brazil, they are going to ask you for a crazy amount of paperwork about your prior marriage, about your prior divorce. And they are not only asking you for those things, but they want to see everything related to it. So if you had a divorce, the decree is not going to be enough. You're going to need to produce, like if there was a settlement agreement, if there was a custody agreement, and everything, you need to have an apostille and an expensive sworn translation in Brazil. Okay? So because of that, super common for foreigners to come to us and say, well, can I just lie and say that I'm single to avoid all this hell? And then we say, listen, we never tell you to do so because guess what? To misrepresent your civil status, it's a crime in our penal code, right? And as an attorney, I'm never going to tell you to do something that's a crime. But guess what? If you look across the board, it's super common, like for realtors, for attorneys, and a lot of professionals in Brazil to just say, listen, take it the easy route. That's very common in Brazil, so you don't need to worry. And then they come to me and then I say, well, you shouldn't do so. Guess what? They look at me and they see me as an exception, okay? I'm lucky that some of our clients, they see that in a positive manner. All right, like I'm dealing with the type of attorney that I wanted to be dealing. But other people, they look at me and they say, that's not the attorney that I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone who's going to make things easier, not more difficult, right? But that's a quick example, right? Like I could tell you, if we had enough time, I could probably tell you, 100 examples of how in our everyday life in Brazil, there is this kind of, a push for you to make things not the right way, right? Like, so the corruption in Brazil, unfortunately, in my opinion, it's not a problem with the government, it's not a problem with the leadership, it's more like something embedded in the society. And the only way to change is that if we try to change in our, individual lives and maybe setting an example, again, far from me from being perfect, I have many, challenges that I need to overcome, but doing things in the gray, doing things illegally and advising my clients to do things illegally, that's not one of my challenges, right? Because I'm pretty strict, and I every single evening I go to bed and I rest my head on the pillow and I sleep like a baby, because I don't need to fear something that I devised, incorrectly in the past is gonna come back and bite me in the neck. All right, so that's a great point. That's a great point, William. All right, Bill, what do you think it would cost to stay in São Paulo for a month or two? $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. Bill, that's such a great question. Bill, let me tell you what I want to do. And I have like one idea in the backlog that you guys know about. We will discuss not just about food in general, but I'm going to, be addressing like the top 7 or top 10 foods that are recognized as Brazilian. I'm even saved a message from Marcela, because she wrote like real quick a list with the top foods that are recognized as Brazilian. So that's one of the ideas I have in the backlog. I didn't get a chance to work on it. The second idea is coming from Bill. Bill, I think like I'm going to take one of our live streams in the near future. I just need time to prepare that. And then I'm going to get a spreadsheet I'm going to share live with you guys over here. And then we're going to do the budgeting for someone to stay for a month in Brazil. Okay, Bill, so that's the idea. And then I can do it live. You guys can ask questions. I can tweak the spreadsheet. And then you would have a pretty, a good idea about the costs involved. Now, I don't want to make you wait, Bill, for a couple of months if that's the case. So the first thing to say is that, of course, this is going to depend on two things: where you are right now, because that's going to impact substantially on the airfare. And number two is like, what type of style is going to be this trip? Is it going to be like, like a backpack style traveling, or are you going to go as the typical U.S. citizen and try to experience the better that Brazil has to offer, right? So there are different takes on it, but let's talk about the first one. Airfare usually it's going to be a substantial part of your cost of traveling to Brazil, and unfortunately there is not much you can do, to overcome this cost structure, because if you happen to be in closer to airports in which there is a high flow of people traveling to Brazil, you're gonna receive you're gonna have access to a much better fare. Okay, if you are not, guess what? You're gonna need to, either buy an expensive airfare, or you're gonna need to travel to another airport. So just to give you like 3 examples: Florida, Miami, Orlando, okay, and in the Northeast, New York and Newark, right? New York and New Jersey, okay? Those 3 states and those cities that I just mentioned, they have, bottom law prices because of the volume of people traveling to Brazil. Most of them, by the way, Brazilians, right? Like we have a huge Brazilian population in the United States, and they concentrate in a few areas, including New York, Newark, Miami, and Florida is actually everywhere, right? But not surprisingly, Orlando and Miami, they are also very present in Massachusetts. Okay, so whenever you are getting an airfare, like if you plan ahead of time, believe it or not, you can sometimes get an airfare for less than $600. Okay, for less than $600. Now, if you are, for instance, in Dallas, okay, or if you are like in the middle west of the country, then prices are going to be substantially higher because there is not much demand. And if that's the case, it's something you want to consider is using like the search engines. I'm pretty sure all of you know about Kayak, right? Which is like a portal in which you're going to find the best, flights in terms of price. There are a couple of more. Unfortunately, I've forgotten the name. There is one portal that is not really well known, that they are gonna try to get you, separate flights and combine them. They call it the hack fare, right? The hack fare. So you're gonna buy, for instance, instead of buying from a single vendor, all the flight segments that you're gonna need, they're gonna play with the offers and they're gonna get you the best deal possible. There is a second one which is even more advanced. They are gonna buy like a complete trip that is not gonna necessarily match with what you need, but you're gonna be able to take advantage of the specific segments that you need to follow to fly to Brazil. Okay, so that's the first segment of the cost. The second segment of the cost, Bill, is going to be where you're going to stay. And Airbnb and Booking.com, they are, in my opinion, the two best options. Booking.com nowadays is ahead of Airbnb. Like, I don't know, 5 years ago, I wouldn't even think about using Booking.com. I would just use like Airbnb when traveling around. Now I use Booking.com more than I use Airbnb. Okay, but those two options, like, I mean, if you are, if you're not looking for something, luxurious, you could very easily find a place in Brazil for $30 or $40 an evening, a night. And if you need something better, like usually $70 is gonna get you something very decent. All right, and then you also need to plan on your meals. If you're staying in an apartment with a kitchen, you can buy, you can buy produce, you can buy groceries and kind of prepare your meals if you have the time to do so. If you're not, you can also, eat at cheap restaurants that we have around. And you're going to have two different types of restaurants. You're going to have the more traditional ones, or not traditional ones, the ones for, leisure, like people are going out to eat. They're going to expect something a little bit fancier. And then there are the restaurants like for everyday meals, like, we call it for a kilo. A kilo is like, the measure of weight, the kilo. We call it kilo restaurants because you pick your food. It's in a kind of buffet style, but then you're going to weigh the food and you're going to pay for as many kilos, or, it's usually a fraction of a kilo. But you get the gist, right? Like, you're gonna pay by the weight, and these are pretty affordable, okay? And whenever I'm traveling, it's not uncommon for me, when I need like a quick meal. Again, I'm not with a client, with a partner. I'm just by myself when I eat something quick. If I go to a kilo restaurant, sometimes I'm gonna pay something like the whole meal, like 30 reais, right? Which is gonna be less than $6. Okay, so altogether, like the meal and maybe some soda or juice, less than $6, right? Now, if you go to a fancy restaurant, and there are plenty of fancy restaurants around, you can pay as much as you want. Like, last time I had a meeting in São Paulo, I went, with a business partner to a churrascaria, right, to a barbecue place, like, and they call it from Argentina, right? So the style of the churrascaria, even though Brazil is the leader in churrascaria barbecue, Argentina is also a major player in this segment. So this specific restaurant was from Argentina, and in São Paulo, right? But like the style was from Argentina, and then in São Paulo the bill came as like, I think, 500 reais. Which was like, almost like $100 per person. Okay, so it really depends on your style and what you're looking for. If you want to go cheap, you can have a meal for $6. If you want to have more of an experience at a restaurant, you're going to spend $100, all right? So there are all types of costs. And so maybe these are some references for you, Bill, like airfare from 600 to 1,200, depending on where you're coming from. For if you're gonna do like an Airbnb type of thing, it could be like between $40 to $70 a night. If you want a fancy hotel, it starts at $100 a night. Meals, then you can just use the numbers I mentioned. And then, of course, you need to add, like, if you want to have, if you want to go to to see like a play, like we have We don't have something like Broadway in Brazil, but we do have, like a high concentration of plays, of, like cultural events, like with a lot of interesting stuff going on, both in São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. For sure, like São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro are the two leaders in this type of leisure. There are, of course, also leisure in which you don't need to spend money, but some of them inevitably, like you're going to need to spend money. All right, Bill, I hope that was helpful. I don't have a single number, but if you are on a budget, you could probably stay in Brazil for, I don't know, $2,000 a month. Maybe 2,500. All right. If you are a fancier gentleman, then maybe you could provision like $3,000 to $4,000, right? So just talking about a range for you to stay in Brazil, and also like we didn't discuss about that, but naturally the cost is going to depend a lot on where you are in Brazil, like São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, more expensive, Florianópolis, more expensive. If you're in the Northeast, if you're going like to smaller towns in the Northeast, pretty cheap. If you're going to the north of country, usually across the border, pretty cheap, right? So you should take that into consideration. So let's say between $2,000 to $4,000 to spend a really nice month in Brazil, Bill, okay? I hope this number makes sense. All right, let's move on. We have a lot of interesting comments today. Jake FS, welcome, Jake. Hi, sir. Just a question on visa application. It says planned stay. Do I put the dates on my flight or 12 months? Since I'm applying for digital nomads. Sorry if this is off topic. Love the stream. You're pretty welcome, Jake. So I'm going to assume like you're coming from abroad, right? If you're coming from abroad and like a visa application. So if you're coming from the United States, you don't need a visa. Now, if you're applying for the digital nomad at a consulate, then yes, you would say 12 months because that's how much time you have on your first digital nomad application, right? I am applying for a digital nomad because, Jake, you have two options. One is to apply in the United States. Another one is to apply in Brazil. Right? If you apply in the United States, yes, by all means, say 12 months. If you're just coming to Brazil under a visa waiver, right? You are a U.S. citizen. You don't need a visa to enter Brazil, at least up to April the 10th of 2025, right? So if you're coming to Brazil, then you don't talk about digital nomad. You just say, listen, I'm just coming here for vacation. And then if you happen to decide, right, once you try out the country, if you decided to apply for the digital nomad, then yes, then you're going to get started with the process of applying for the digital nomad visa. All right, Jake. Hermon, good to see you, Hermon. I haven't eaten red meat or pork. I'm over 12 years in the U.S. I may try a Brazilian steak when I come to Brazil. That's interesting, Hermon. Yes, I mean, big experience. Fogo de chão is like the more traditional one. They have a lot of nice touches. And if your currency is from the U.S., meaning you're making money in the U.S., pretty affordable. I think, Fogo de Chão nowadays, it costs like $50 US for admission, meaning you're going to have access to a buffet, as much meat as you want to eat. And then, of course, like they're going to charge you substantial for drinks. So if you're going to have a drink, maybe it's going to be an additional, $8 to $9. And I understand $8 to $9 is not a lot by U.S. standards, but by Brazilian standards, it is. Okay, like I know that in California, like I remember I went to California. I think it was last year. I was in where was I? I think it was in Los Angeles, right? Like I went for a mezcal, and I paid. It was like $18, like for a single, tiny drink, like $18. Plus tip and whatnot, like it was $22, right? I had a single drink, and that was enough for me, right? $22. But again, telling you about the experience, Hermon, $50 to get into the most recognized barbecue place in Brazil, plus $8 to $9 for each drink. All right, Ellie, hi Luciano, crazy period during the docs for the digital nomad. Not easy as I am Italian and living in Czech Republic. Yes, Ali. Like as you probably know, we offer the service to assist with the digital nomad. I'm not sure if you hired our service, and but even with our service, sometimes people still have to do some things by themselves. Like if you need an apostilled birth certificate from Italy or Czech Republic, like that may be sometimes time consuming. But yes, we assist with the digital nomad. I would guess nowadays we are probably the number one provider of services for the digital nomad visa/residency in Brazil. But yes, if you need, Ali, use our service. If you're using our service, I hope you're happy with it. Jake FX at Ali, I am in a similar situation. Yep. Right, pretty much everything in Brazil, Ali and Jake, like is going to involve a lot of red tape and bureaucracy. It's a big trait of our culture, okay, and it doesn't stop there. You're gonna see or you're gonna experience that across the board until the day you are gone from Brazil, okay. So just take as it is and focus on the upsides. Keplo, I have a question. The digital nomad visa application, but I should save it for the end of the webcast. I don't want to interrupt the conversation. Keplo, feel free to share. All right, we are actually well into our live stream, so feel free to share, so we can hopefully get to your question still today. I know sometimes we are in a really interesting conversation, but listen, this is like a live stream, and whatever is important to you as a participant is gonna be important to me as well. So never shy away from asking your questions or sharing your comments, even if it's not the ideal time. We just take it when possible. Now let me ask you guys to please like our live stream. That's important to us as a business, and that's also important to other people like you, like when they try to search the content that we're talking about today. YouTube or Google may select this content to show, as long as it has a decent number of likes. All right, so if you are enjoying the conversation, if you are participating here today, I ask you to please like the live stream, and much appreciated. Yes, I just saw Bill here. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like. Thank you, Bill. Bill is always reminding us about that. I really appreciate Bill. All right. William Frost. Heavy bureaucracy is a form of administrative sadism. Good for you for sticking to the rules. You are a good lawyer in that case. Hats off. I appreciate William. Yes. Like I said, and that's another trait. Like you guys are probably going to see that. Like if you've been in Brazil, or if you ever be in Brazil, if you ever come to Brazil, you're going to see that, you're going to pay attention to that. Brazilians, they are pretty quick to trash Brazil. All right, some other countries is different. But in Brazil, like whenever you start to talk about Brazil, Brazilians are going to say, well, Brazil is hopeless, the corruption, the government, this and that. But they don't really pay attention to themselves, right? Like, so usually, I'm going to give another example, another take on what I just said. Brazilians are going to talk about corruption in the government, right? There are the so-called ghost jobs, right? It's like emprego fantasma. It's not a really good translation, like a ghost job, but it basically means that you have a relationship with a politician, for instance, a congressperson, and then this congressperson is going to give you a job, but this job, it doesn't really exist, or in other words, you don't need to do anything. So it is part of our a culture or social mindset that if someone has a ghost job, they are going to go like to that specific department, they are going to hang like a suit, a jacket on the chair, and they will never come back. Like they're just going to collect the payments at the end of the month. So, for ghost jobs are a major sign or a major evidence of the widespread corruption in the Brazilian government, right? And you never cease to hear news of people being caught. So the way I like to joke about how Brazilians are quick to trash the government, but are never quick to think about their attitude, is it goes like this. Listen, everybody is gonna think that ghost jobs are like horrible, are unethical, are basically a crime. But I would tell you, if people are offered a ghost job, 9 out of 10 Brazilians are gonna rush to get that job, right? So that shows a type of mindset that is not really conducive to a more advanced society, like from a government and political institutions perspective, okay? But that's another take, William, on the bureaucracy. Jake FX, fortunately, flights from Dublin to Rio are not super crazy. My fare for December, the busy season, was just 580 pounds, luggage included, and these included a return flight. Jake, amazing. That's a really nice cost, right? I would guess, I don't know, maybe 700-800 US dollars. So for peak season, that's pretty affordable. And I would guess like Dublin is not exactly close to Brazil, right? So maybe there are lots of Brazilians over there, because this price sounds pretty solid. Jake, good for you. Adabi Tony, good day, sir. Good to see you here, Adabi. Ellie, digital nomad question. I have some docs in Czech, and translating them into Brazil to Portuguese is difficult. What if I translate them in Czech Republic to English and then in Brazil to Portuguese? So the right approach, Ellie, is for you to have documents translated in Brazil. Okay. Now, something that would help me answer this question is whether you are applying in Czech Republic, or if you're going to apply in Brazil. If you're applying in Brazil for the digital nomad, the only document that people are going to be pretty strict on the translation is going to be the birth certificate. Okay, so for the birth certificate, if you have a birth certificate in Czech, my recommendation is for you to stick to this sequence that I'm going to tell you right now. You're going to get an apostille in Czech Republic, and then in Brazil, you need to find a sworn translator translating from Czech to Portuguese, okay? Because if you do the Czech to English and then Brazil to Portuguese, and then in Brazil to Portuguese, they may not be fully compliant, and then you're gonna need to rely on the immigration officer. Some of them, they are gonna turn a blind eye, so maybe you're lucky. Others are gonna say, well, I see here that translation was done outside of Brazil, and therefore I'm not gonna accept, okay? Now, again, if you're applying in Brazil, Ellie, for every single other document, nobody cares about how the translation is being done. As long as you're providing the document in the original source language and a matching translation, people are not asking you questions, okay? So your problem is actually more on the birth certificate. I hope that makes sense. Bill says, thank you so much. Don't forget to like. You're welcome, Bill. I hope the idea about costs was helpful. Tony, Mr. Oliveira, my friend sent you an email, but yet get a reply from you, sir. Adabi, so usually it's our team who answers the emails. Like we receive, I don't know, maybe 200 to 300 emails a day. I unfortunately, I have no time to see any of the emails at all. Like even like current clients who are buying a service from our firm, I don't see their emails. Like we have the team members, of course, assigned to the services. I have a Kina Tess. She's my assistant, and when she sees something, like that, she thinks, oh, this is very important, then she's gonna come to me and say, Luciano, you gotta answer this one, or to who should I send this email, right? But just to let you guys know, like I don't see any emails. Like here at the firm, like between 200 and 300 emails a day, just new emails, right? Again, I'm not talking about ongoing work. Ongoing work goes to each respective team member, right? So they don't go into our main inbox, but just the main inbox is like between 200 and 300 emails, zero chance for me to review. But if your friend never got a reply, tell your friend to just resend, say, listen, I sent this email, I never got feedback, and then, most probably than not, he's going to get a reply, Adabi. But thank you for sharing. Jake FX, thanks for the response. I'm actually from Northern Ireland, and I've been to Rio a few times recently. I only decided recently I would like to leave with the digital nomad visa. Best to apply while in Rio or in advance. Jake, so it goes like this, right? Whenever I have this question asked, I'm going to tell you, listen, the number one difference between applying abroad at a consulate and applying in Brazil is going to be health insurance. Because if you try to apply abroad at a consulate, the consulate is going to ask you for proof of health insurance with coverage in Brazil. Okay, so if you have that already, by all means, you can consider applying at a consulate. If you don't have it, by all means, avoid trying to get it because it's expensive. And usually the health insurance that you are able to buy without the Brazilian resident card is going to be crappy. Okay, so you're going to pay several $1,000s, not several $100s, several $1,000s for something that's going to be of little use to you later on, right? So a pretty clear-cut approach. Have a good health insurance, not travel insurance. Then by all means consider applying abroad. If you don't have it, even if you have a beautiful health insurance in your country, but it doesn't offer coverage in Brazil, guess what? You're out of luck. And in this case, my recommendation is going to be for you to apply in Brazil. Another perspective, like if you want to do a hands-off process, usually we recommend you to do that in Brazil because then you can hire a firm like us and we handle like the bulk of the procedure. We may still need your help, like if you're in Czech Republic, you need to chase the birth certificate, get an apostille. Sometimes we can share like a local service provider for the apostille, but it's still on you. Now, everything else, like, translation, sworn translation, handling the application system, we're going to do for you. So, if you want someone to take this burden out of your back, applying in Brazil, it's usually a better match. Keplo, digital nomad visa. I know we need to get a criminal report from our government. Is Brazilian federal police only looking for felonies? But if there's misdemeanor from 10 years ago, do you think I will get denied? Keplo, misdemeanors usually are not a bar. Okay, there are two things that Brazil is pretty strict about. Violent crimes, like you shot someone, okay, or sex crimes, you raped someone, particularly if you was a minor. I mean, those things, they are like pretty no go, okay. But everything else, it was a misdemeanor. It was a DUI from 20 years ago, from 10 years ago, from 5 years ago. Usually, very good chance that you're going to be approved. Never guaranteed. Remember that. Getting a visa or a residency is not a right, is a privilege, meaning that the immigration officer has discretion in terms of giving you or not. Very important, this distinction. But here at the firm, I think we never had a misdemeanor that was not related to sex crimes that represented a bar for someone to secure the residency. Okay, Caplo. All right, we are in the final minutes of our live stream. Let me tell you guys, we're going to have a live stream this Sunday. The live stream is already booked in our YouTube channel. So do yourself a favor, go to our channel, and you probably are on our channel, but just go to the date. On Sunday, you click on Notify Me. That's going to help you remember about the live stream, and maybe you have like a comment or a question that wasn't addressed in our live stream, and this way you can come back on Sunday to ask or address your concern. I see we have a number of likes, and if you haven't liked it already, please do like our live stream. Let's move on with the questions and comments. Jake FX, liked the stream, my first time watching live. That's great, Jake. We try to make it entertaining, right? We try to depart a little bit from the legalese. I'm sure nobody comes excited to our channel to hear legalese stuff. So I'm always trying to help bring like interesting content, right? Like barbecue, food. In our last live stream, we spoke about Brazilian music, bossa nova, right? Costs for you to fly and stay in Brazil, distinctions between the different areas of Brazil. Don't need to tell you how big Brazil is. Brazil is actually bigger than the United States of America if you remove Alaska and Hawaii, which, by the way, are not actually connected to the continental United States. So Brazil is actually bigger than the United States. And Brazil is twice as big, actually more than twice as big as the European Union. So, like connecting to our conversation about culture, when you get Brazil, you are actually getting a whole continent. It's not just a single country. We have, different costumes. We have different realities, different geographies. We have, different, lifestyles. There is always something for you if you look carefully in Brazil. Okay, and now let's take a look here. Caplo. So Caplo is commenting a minor drug marijuana charge that was technically expunged in the state. But that's only for the state. You can never remove anything from the federal government. True, yeah. I don't think you're going to have any problems, Caplo. Again, we can never guarantee. I'm not the one, signing on your visa. But I wouldn't be concerned, okay? I wouldn't be concerned if I was you. Another perspective for those with something in terms of criminal records, Brazil also does take consideration if you have taken care of the criminal issue. By taking care, I mean like if you had to do time, like you need to do time, like meaning right you went to prison, or if it was community service that you completed the community service. And you cannot be in probate, okay? Like, I mean, I'm not going to address the person, but we had like a person who actually hired our services here, recently, and this person was under probation, okay? So, I mean, there is no sense, right? Like, I mean, for us to handle a case for someone who is in probation, right? The Brazilian government is going to look at it and say, listen, you are still taking care of your legal troubles. Like, why are you trying to come over here? Like, I mean, you're not going to be able to complete your probation period in Brazil. Your probation is in the United States under very structured and rigid rules, right? Like, why would you try to come to Brazil? So what do? Like, we decline the client, right? And we cannot help. But in your case, again, like it was something so minor, it was expunged. So absolutely, it was taken care, Caplo. I don't see any problem with your situation. Okay, Adabi, dear sir, can foreigners open small business in Brazil from overseas? Yes, Adabi, you can open a business. Open a business just like everything else in Brazil. It's full of red tape and bureaucracy. But it is feasible, right? Like, I mean, there is always a way. Very common, Adabi, for people from certain countries, certain areas of the globe, to come to Brazil and succeed. Brazil is not as friendly when it comes to small businesses as the United States is, in my opinion. But people, from certain areas like Africa, from China, from the Middle East, like they are usually able to succeed. And my reading, okay, that's my personal opinion. My reading is because they are used to tough environments. So, they live in a tough environment. When they come to Brazil, maybe it's not as tough as it is in Africa or the Middle East. So they are able to flourish in our society, okay? But when I see people coming from the United States and without a clue about Brazil trying to start a business, we don't help. Like, we basically decline. We say, listen, we are not the right partner, just because, there is a lot of learning There is a lot of red tape, like there is this whole labor framework, which is horrible for new businesses. If you want to know more about what I'm talking about, just search why Walmart failed miserably in Brazil, and then you're going to understand what I'm talking about, the labor framework. But depending on where you are, Adab, you can actually succeed in Brazil, because guess what? Brazil is better than other countries. Certainly not better than the United States by any measures, but Brazil is actually better than many other countries, right? So there you go. There is always a possibility for you to succeed business-wise in Brazil, Adabi. All right, I see here Ndongmo Joseph. Welcome, Joseph. How can a Forex entrepreneur prove employment for Brazil or Portugal GN visa? It's even possible. I would not focus on the Forex. Okay, Forex is not really well seen by authorities in general, right? Like Forex, particularly there are some Forex like exchanges, people see it more as a gamble than an actual activity. Just saying, right? I'm not like judging you, Joseph, by any way. I'm just saying that usually, the Forex entrepreneur is not really well seen. So my recommendation is to maybe focus on the employment, and it gotta be like a company. So if you are an entrepreneur and if you have a company ABC, company ABC could be hiring you, right? Particularly if you have the company, you have a work contract between the company and yourself. You are showing your financials, showing that you meet the requirements from the Brazilian immigration or the Portuguese immigration. Okay, so I would say focus more on the work contract, show that you are doing legit activities for this business. I don't know if you're doing website development, if you're doing services, if you're doing customer service, okay? But by just saying Forex entrepreneur, guaranteed this is not going to work, right? But depending on how you structure the relationship, that could make more sense. That could make more sense for the application, Joseph. All right? Okay, final one, William Frost. That's the best thing about Brazil. It is the diversity of the country, and you can see this in the cuisine, amazing Arabic, Italian, Japanese food, even Brazilian food varies from different areas. Absolutely, William. Arabic food, like particularly in São Paulo, you have so many options. I love like a particular dessert. Arabic dessert is actually Lebanese. I don't know how to write, but the pronunciation, at least how we say in Brazil, is haleu. Haleu, it's like a pasta, a kind of grayish pasta. I know it doesn't, the image doesn't sound like or doesn't look like something pleasant, but it's delicious. Like it's an Arabic dessert called haleu. Every time I am in São Paulo, because there are so many places selling haleu, I'm gonna have one, okay? But all the other culinary, Italian, very big. Like I was born in Bexiga, which is traditionally like an Italian neighborhood in São Paulo. Japanese food, you have the entire Bairro da Liberdade or Liberty City within São Paulo. You have literally like dozens and dozens and dozens of Japanese and Chinese restaurants. So listen, culinary, I would say no city is going to beat São Paulo, okay? But you can also travel throughout the country and taste cuisines that are going to be particular to each state and city. All right, that's it for today, folks. I hope to see you on Sunday. Write your comments and questions up front so you don't forget on Sunday. Come to our channel, go to the schedule live stream for Sunday. You click on notify me so you don't miss our next live stream. And I hope you guys have a blessed rest of your Wednesday. You take care.